Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Round the Nation right here, Jeff Waldorf here with you on this, what is it? Is Wednesday? Jesus Christ. It's only Wednesday. Welcome to the show. Oh geez. We've got a fun show for you guys today. We have Donald Trump versus windmills. That's fun. I didn't get to the orange story, mainly because I didn't know it existed. I just found out about it, and I'm like, damn it, I really wanted to do that story. Sad day for me. I guess I should pay more attention to what Trump's doing. But we have non-Trump related stories. For example, we're going to talk about mainstream media and Bernie Sanders. So Bernie Sanders is the Democratic frontrunner, and I think the mainstream media is just figuring it out. So I've got that report. You're going to love that. Then we have, I don't know if this is the right thing to call it, but I'm going to talk about Biden, and I'm gonna nickname it Gropegate, which is horrible. By the way, I probably shouldn't do that. But we're going to talk about that and who is actually at fault for this becoming a thing. Interesting. We'll talk about that. Then maybe we'll talk about Ivanka Trump getting slammed for Women's History Month. I know that was last month, but nonetheless, a little bit of a fun story. And then we have the climate change poop story that I'm sure you guys will love. So that's fun. Got a fun show today for you guys. So we'll get into it. First, I got to thank some patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation. I'm going to give a shout out to Alan Johnson, Irving Gonzalez, Katie Kleba, Khalid Nixon, Jeff Curry, and Wendy Girardin. So thank you for supporting independent progressive media. Couldn't do the show without you, so thank you so much for doing that and for helping us stay in the air. And of course, all the different donations from all the different places also help us, to do things like fundraise for a camera or just generally stay in the air. So I appreciate each and every one of you, the people who donate through our Venmo, the people who donate through our PayPal. So big thanks all around. I appreciate you guys 100%. All right. That said, let's move on. We'll start out with Trump versus windmills, which is a fun story. Oh yeah, and also, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. I always forget to say that, but you should really, you should really do that because it really helps. Okay, anyway. All right. So President Trump is being called out on Twitter after making a hilariously absurd claim about windmills. Take a look.
Hillary wanted to put up wind. If you have a windmill anywhere near your house, congratulations. Your house just went down 75% in value. And they say the noise causes cancer. You told me that one, okay? The thing makes it so... And, of course, it's like a graveyard for birds. If you love birds, you'd never want to walk under a windmill because it's a very sad, sad sight.
Very, very sad. Sad sight. But wait. Windmills, what? They cause what? Cancer? I don't think so. Actually, for those of you who might be unsure, like, wait a minute, I didn't know they had caused cancer. No, windmill noises don't cause cancer. I mean, that's literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Yet, this is the man who says, I'm a very stable genius. I mean, look, you're going to call out windmills for allegedly causing cancer, while at the same time pushing for more coal plants whose mining and emissions are actually linked to real health risks. For example, according to 113 studies published in various peer-reviewed publications, documented health risks from exposure to the pollutants involved in burning coal include premature death, cardiovascular disease, lung cancer, low birth rate, higher risk of developmental and behavioral disorders in infants and children, as well as higher infant mortality. So, but coal is better, but windmills, the noises, will make you get cancer. Come on. Now, there's a lot of great tweets in response to this video that was put out, but I want to go first to Twitter user Jared Yates Sexton, who pointed out something very relevant in this. They said, there are entire internet communities that spend hours upon hours cooking up vast and complicated narratives where Donald Trump is a mastermind orchestrating world affairs. These people, they edit videos for hours in order to make Trump look good. Look, this actually could be applied to a larger narrative about conspiracy theories, and no doubt this is where this comes from. And look, President Trump, I've showed you on multiple occasions how President Trump loves conspiracy theories. And in fact, he's been known, or was known, to be a friend of Alex Jones. And by the way, said he has recently admitted in a deposition that he may have psychosis, or at least blames his Sandy Hook trutherism on psychosis. Fascinating. Anyway, yes, the president watched Alex Jones, went on his show once. That kind of tells you everything you need to know about Trump and conspiracy theories. Now, fun tweets. Let's go to those. Judd Legum starts things out by saying, things Trump sincerely believes. Exercise is bad for you. Now, I've talked about this before. Donald Trump thinks everybody has an internal battery, right? And if you exercise, that depletes your battery faster. And when, of course, that battery runs out, you die. So that's why it's like, I don't exercise. It depletes my battery. I live a long time because I've got great genes and a big battery. But I'm not going to exercise. Instead, I will eat cheeseburgers and drink lots of Diet Coke. Yeah. So that's what he literally believes. Now, he also believes, as I mentioned, as I showed you the video, noise from the wind farms cause cancer, which they do not. And then, of course, related, climate change is a hoax, as he pointed out, and said that it was perpetrated by the Chinese to hurt American industry. Now, that's kind of ironic, considering everything that President Trump has done to hurt American industry, including solar power, right? He put tariffs on solar panels from China, right? Solar happened to be one of the biggest, fastest growing industries in the United States. Now, they're not, they still have more jobs than coal, but unfortunately, the solar industry has been hurt because they're no longer able to import things from China. So then you also had the recent talk of him potentially closing on the border with Mexico, which would massively hurt American businesses. And look, some of the reports said within a week, the United States would stop being able to make cars. Yeah. And then Legum adds, he's the most powerful man on earth. Oh boy. Sam Stein says, it's just totally weird that the president casually suggests that the noise from wind farms could cause cancer, and no one will be talking about this in 24 hours. Because likely he would either have said something dumber or done something horrific. Either or. And why? It's because he's a madman. And an idiot to boot. Marion McKenna says, I'm definitely not getting into the cancer thing. What? But it was just 2 weeks ago that Danish researchers found no significant relationship between wind farms and heart attacks and strokes. See, again, these are conspiracy theories from the right to go after wind farms for, look, they're donors, basically. There are these so-called think tanks that come out with this ridiculous stuff, or these conspiracy theorists, and like, oh, no. You don't understand, coal, oil, and natural gas is fantastic. But when it comes to wind farms, well, I mean, wind farms, they kill all the birds, and then they cause cancer. And then the solar panels, they'll suck up all the energy from the sun, and then the sun will be depleted. No, what? What are you talking about? Again, this is some of the most ridiculous stuff, and of course, it only is there to help, giant corporations like the oil companies. So, anyway, Taya Sarkar says, yes, the noise from wind farms causes cancer, but coal's all well and good. Yeah? Okay. Not only that, but fracking. Fracking also is a problem, especially when it leaches into groundwater, which we have seen in a lot of different places where the fracking boom had really taken over. So you guys remember Gasland with Josh Fox, where people can literally light their tap water on fire. That was pre-Trump. So that was a big problem with fracking. Big problem with oil and gas. But, oh no, windmills are the problem. And solar panels. You ever seen a solar spill? You might get maybe a sunburn. Ooh. I know, terrible. Anyway, Pour Me Coffee tweeted in, that's okay. All you need to do is get the Bose cancer canceling headphones. You should be fine. And then David Little asks, what's the opposite of hinged? Ooh. I know this one. That would be unhinged for 100, Alex. That was probably super unintentional because Alex Trebek has recently said that he has cancer. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay, moving on. West Wing Report says President's ongoing attacks on wind energy. He says tonight that turbines cause cancer, infuriates supporters in big wind states like Iowa and Texas. And 2, Trump has fought Scottish officials over turbines near his properties. Now, that's interesting. So I looked into that, right? So that fight involved him fighting against, people in Scotland that wanted to put up wind turbines off the coast in the ocean, right? So now Donald Trump has a golf course in Scotland, and so he's like, I could see the wind turbines from my golf course. It's going to kill tourism. I don't want you to put them out. Well, he lost that fight. And of course he fought against it because he didn't think that people would like the view. Now, what's interesting is that in 2018, they put up those windmills and or those wind turbines, I should say. And it looks like nobody cared. Revenue for his golf courses in Scotland is about the same as it was before. Oops. But there's more tweets. One more. Ben Collins says, the wind turbines give you cancer thing is such a deep cut in the conspiracy ecosystem. It's remarkable it navigated its way to Trump, who doesn't really use the internet other than to tweet. Whatever grapevine he heard this through must have some really wild stuff in it. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. This is kind of and don't take this the wrong way, right? This is what happens when you mix older people who are not intellectually curious. I'm not saying all older people are not intellectually curious. That's a stupid thing to say. But I'm saying it's what happens when you mix someone like Trump, who, yes, is older, not very tech savvy, not very savvy in pretty much anything, but that's besides the point. Someone who doesn't really care to learn things and basically only believes what he believes, right? This is what happens when you mix those kinds of people with the internet and places like, 4chan, 8chan, conspiracy theorist blogs, even satire sites. I mean, these are the same people who, by the way, when I was younger, said, "Oh, don't trust the things that people say on TV." Now they're the ones that open up crazy chain letters about like Obama being a secret Kenyan Muslim. These are the ones that forward and spread conspiracy theories. I mean, literally, Trump voters have been shown in studies to believe and share the most conspiracy theories on social media. Now, that would be kind of hilarious, seeing how these people believe in such crazy things, if it wasn't so damaging to our society. And so that's the real problem here. Okay. Moving on, let's get into our non-Trump stories. Now, members of corporate media recently had a very painful revelation following the release of Senator Bernie Sanders' fundraising totals for this quarter. Now, Senator Sanders raised a whopping $18.2 million from roughly 525,000 individual donors since entering the Democratic presidential primary in February. Now, 20% of those donors were first-time donors, and the average donation was about $20. Now, more interesting stats about that: 88% of the total came from donations of less than $200, and 99.5% of donations were for around $100 or less. The majority of donors were young people, mainly nurses and teachers. So those are the two occupations that happen to donate most to Bernie Sanders. Fascinating. So now the reason that I give you that is not necessarily because I care so much about the money. I think there's too much focus on the money, but even though it is important to run a presidential campaign, these stats have led to members of corporate media facing a very uncomfortable truth: that Bernie Sanders, thanks to these totals, is the front runner for the Democratic Party nomination. Now, look, as I said before, the reason they come to this conclusion is because of the money. Of course. That's the only thing that people in corporate media understand. Oh my God, he's raising that much money? He must be the front runner. But look, I guess I'm not going to begrudge them that, right? As I said before, they think in terms of mainly how much you can raise, because most candidates used to raise all their money from corporate donors, and they would get large sums of money. And of course, you win the money race, then you are more likely to win the political race, right? It's that old way of thinking, right? Now, 2020 is a bit different because most of the candidates now have pledged not to take big corporate PAC money, thanks to Bernie Sanders. Now, the donations, as I said, actually do matter now because it's a measure of energy, right? So if you have more donors and smaller donors, that's more of a gauge of energy for your campaign, okay, instead of relying on big giant corporations. So that's why this matters. Now, I want to give you some of the reactions here from members of corporate media upon these fundraising numbers and these revelations. Now, I'm going to start with NBC reporter Casey Hunt. Now, she tweeted this, quote, "Anyone who doesn't treat Bernie Sanders becoming the Democratic nominee as a realistic and even likely possibility is making a big mistake and failed to learn from mistakes made in 2016. That is an NBC News political reporter, member of establishment media, saying, if you are not taking him seriously, you are making a big mistake. You are doing literal, this is my words, literal malpractice. Wow. There's more. She said, if we used the metrics of any other year and applied them to Bernie, he would be called a frontrunner. And she listed off some reasons why. First, he came in second last time against Hillary Clinton, the most well-funded and well-known politician running in 2016. Almost won Iowa, did win New Hampshire, is near the top in nearly all the polls, has huge fundraising numbers, proven appeal to the base of the party. And yet he gets ignored. It's absurd. Those were her words. She also said that literally no other candidate, with the possible exception of Biden, has anywhere near as strong a list of frontrunner attributes And I would argue Bernie is ahead of Biden in several areas. Well, she is absolutely correct in her analysis and assessment. This is absurd. Now, a lot of us notice that there's a little bit of a double standard here. Now, why does that double standard exist? I mean, look, if Joe Biden was in the race, and he's not yet, to be fair, but he had all that stuff behind him, he had all his numbers, he would, of course, be called the front runner without any hesitation. Or, better example, Beto O'Rourke. Or, I'm sorry, Robert Francis O'Rourke. What if he had those numbers? He'd be called the front runner. They would hail him as the next Democratic hope, the next Barack Obama, and the one to defeat Trump in 2020. It wouldn't even be a question of how they would treat Beto O'Rourke or Kamala Harris. Who, by the way, Kamala Harris had another impressive fundraising haul. She raised $12 million. And yes, she had a lot of small donors as well. So credit where credit is due. Nonetheless, they would treat her as a front runner, but not Senator Bernie Sanders. And of course, why is that? Because it is Bernie Sanders. And the establishment has basically already made the decision that they despise him. And they've despised him ever since 2016. And the reason is simple. He shake out the system, right? There are a lot of people right now who are heavily invested in the status quo. And they don't want change. They would rather have a Republican. They would rather have another 4 years of Donald Trump than have a progressive that would end, for example, money in politics. Where a lot of these media figures or media companies get their money from advertisements. Bernie Sanders says, I want to get rid of that. I want to get the money out of politics. Now, speaking of media, let's go to CNN. Now, CNN had an interesting discussion, including Jake Tapper and his panel. Here's that conversation.
Hillary wanted to put up wind.
Let's go to the right video here.
Bernie Sanders, of declared candidates, overwhelmingly leading in fundraising, leading in polls nationally and in key states, the largest number of individual donors and small dollar amounts. I think it's just, you can't even deny it. He is the Democratic presidential frontrunner of declared candidates.
On April 3rd of 2019.
April 2nd. Yes,
April 2nd, sorry, of 2019. I also think 20% of his donors were new. And that's an incredibly impressive number, and one that I think exceeds most people's expectations of what would happen here. I think many Democrats thought that he hit his high water point in 2016, that he'd come back in the race, he'd be leading in the beginning, and then he would kind of fizzle out. That hasn't happened. So there's a reality about the strength of his candidacy, the amount of money he raised, $28 million cash on hand. He's going to be in this through the long haul, no doubt about it.
To make one more point too, he has another asset too, experience. He's actually run a presidential campaign before.
What kind of world have I dropped into? They were actually speaking positively about Bernie Sanders on CNN. Jake Tapper, of all people. Like, he's the front runner. I mean, he's the front runner. And the other guy says, yeah, and he also has experience. He's run a presidential campaign before. And so he's going to be here for quite some time. Wow. Undeniable. Now, of course, that has establishment figures and basically anti-Bernie Twitter pundits completely flipping out. And it's kind of awesome. I mean, they're out there saying, how dare you point out facts? How dare you? We hate Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is just like Donald Trump. He's got no chance. He has no chance. He's literally the Democratic frontrunner. Now, he's not, no chance. No chance. Look, as far as him being like Donald Trump, and I love that attack because of how absurd it is. You know, he's literally the inverse of Donald Trump. For one, he's too nice. We'll get into that in another segment. He doesn't, like, really attack people. Yes, he's come out with very harsh on Donald Trump. But generally, he's very I don't know, he treats Democratic colleagues that he's running against with kids' gloves. And so the only thing that he's really had the temerity to attack is, and I should say to attack very strongly, is, again, Donald Trump, but mostly the system. And the system that is broke for a lot of Americans. And Bernie Sanders is one of the few that actually has a detailed plan in order to fix some of these systemic problems. So, and look, the solutions that he has are deeply popular, that he brought into the mainstream of the Democratic Party. He brought into the debate. Now, I love the response to that, of course, is, well, now that Bernie Sanders has brought all these ideas, now he just has to step back and let someone else run with it. That doesn't make any sense. So you go into the party and you make these ideas, a living wage, free college for all. You make these ideas popular, mainstream planks to the party, and then what? You're just supposed to sit to the side? Well, I mean, his ideas are already popular, so I guess we don't need him anymore. No, but he's literally the only one that's been fighting for these ideas for 30, 40 years, his entire career, decades. So, and look, of course, the Green New Deal, that's also a new idea, mainly brought by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, having some establishment figures also sign on to it as well. And that's also incredibly popular among Democratic voters. We wouldn't have an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez if we didn't have Bernie Sanders, by the way, or the Justice Democrats, to give them credit as well. So all of those ideas, by the way, progressives winning of these elections and Medicare for all, etc., all that stuff was considered fringe back in 2016 by these same reporters, these same people. And yet, these ideas, when you go through and you poll them with the American public, they're incredibly popular. They all poll over 70%. And here's the thing. I don't think they still get it. I know they're like coming to the realization finally that, like, oh man, Bernie Sanders, he is something to be reckoned with. Wow, I can't believe that. They're acting super surprised because in their minds, in the Washington bubble, they would have never thought that a self-described socialist could be the front runner of the Democratic Party. It never crossed their minds. I mean, how can this guy be so popular? My friends in the health insurance industry tell me that Medicare for all is awful. It's horrible. That everybody loves their private insurance. I mean, all these other Democrats are still, even Democrats that I like, are still open to, well, there are many paths to get to Medicare for all, and so, or truly universal health care, so maybe we could go with the public option, et cetera, Medicare Plus, extra for all, which is the ridiculous plan. It's not actually single payer. No, they're wrong. They're wrong. And so Bernie Sanders, he's finally starting to make some headway. He finally started to break through that Washington bubble. And you can bet that there's going to be a lot of people, especially like Trump, that are not going to see him coming. Now, interestingly enough, Bernie Sanders was just invited and accepted an invitation to do, I think, a town hall on Fox News. So if Fox News is starting to take him seriously, watch out. But and Jake Tapper also starting to take him seriously. Some of these NBC reporters, he's starting to break through. Some of them have at least seemed to have learned from 2016. Even, I wouldn't say, Peter Dow, but kind of. He hasn't come out to support Bernie Sanders or anything like that, but he's certainly challenging the Democratic Party in a way that he's never done so before. And I got to give him credit. I do. And so, but seriously though, Bernie Sanders has spent the last couple of years since Hillary Clinton lost to Donald Trump, laying the groundwork for the next run, visiting different states, reaching out to the black community, people of color, choosing an amazingly talented and diverse campaign staff. And look, the result is Bernie Sanders, he's coming. He's coming to fight, and he's ready for that fight. And anybody who underestimates him is going to get very much surprised. Okay. All right. So, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll read some comments here. And then we will talk about Joe Biden and where Joe Biden staffers think this this controversy is coming from. So we'll talk about that after the break. Like and share the stream, and we'll see you in a minute. Around the Nation. welcome back to the show. Around the Nation right here, Jeff Waldorf here with you. Please like and share the stream. So, no, I go through and I read the chat, and I just found it funny. There was apparently a Trump supporter in here, and I just love the reaction. He's like, I think I sat down at the wrong table. I need to go. Hey, man, you're welcome to watch, buddy. You might like some of the stuff that I say, although maybe not. Nonetheless, hey, I welcome everybody here. Everybody's got their own opinions. All right, anyway, let's read some comments here from members. Sarge Tech says, Wall Street was sent a burn notice. And they're, I don't know how they're going to react to it. Probably very negatively. But the interesting thing is, I think I saw an article earlier today where Wall Street is apparently making, 3 times more what someone on minimum wage makes. Their bonuses are more than what someone on minimum wage makes for per year. That's staggering. 3 times. Just in a bonus. No, the levels of income and wealth inequality are disastrous in America. And of course, when it gets that bad, it doesn't go well for corporations and wealthy people. Ask the French. Now, the Searoth also mentions, I think it just clicked in CNN, that Bernie is going to win. Hell yeah. Love it. All right. So now, let's move on. Let's go to Biden. Okay. So now former Vice President Joe Biden has been under fire for inappropriately touching women. Now, look, you guys know there's been a lot of video out there showing him putting his hands on the shoulders of women and smelling their hair and getting basically super uncomfortably close to women and girls. Now, Business Insider is reporting that the former vice president has been subject of this controversy after a former Nevada State Assemblywoman wrote an op-ed accusing him of touching her inappropriately and kissing her head during a 2014 campaign event. So that's what started this whole thing. Basically, again, we've known that he's been doing this. In fact, back in 2015, Jon Stewart ran a segment on this with the caption, "The Audacity of Grope," which I found highly amusing, even at the time. So now, the woman, Lucy Flores, brought this back, and she said, look, this is an issue of personal space. He got into my personal space. I felt very uncomfortable, and I wanted people to know about this. I wanted him to know about this so that maybe he didn't do it anymore. Okay, that's perfectly fine. In fact, she said, quote, "For the record, I don't believe that it was a bad intention. I'm not in any way suggesting that I felt sexually assaulted or sexually harassed. I did feel invaded. I felt that there was a violation of my personal space." So now look, I believe her because she says he didn't have any ill intent. I believe that. I believe that. I don't think that really in his heart of hearts, I don't think he thinks I was doing anything wrong. Well, what do you mean? I was being friendly. I was being supportive, right? So now, one of the prominent videos from this, by the way, that backs that up is a confirmation of Ash Carter. Now, this was during the Obama years. Ash Carter was on stage, as was his wife, Stephanie Carter. Now, that picture, that video has been used by a lot of people to say, oh, see, look, she's completely uncomfortable. Well, let me give you her statement on that. Stephanie, in her own words, says, the Joe Biden in my picture is a close friend helping someone get through a big day, for which I will always be grateful. So as the sole owner of my story, it is high time that I reclaim it from strangers, Twitter, the pundits, and late-night hosts. Now, it's important to note that the Carters are really good friends of the Biden family, and again, I do have no doubt that he was offering support. The thing is, Look, Joe Biden is old school, right? He does not understand personal space when it comes to strangers. Well, no, not when it comes to strangers. When it comes to women, and women only. Imagine he does this to a dude. No, that doesn't happen. And so that's really part of the problem. When it comes to personal, family, friends, sure, you can do that. You can feel friendly, right? There's not a whole lot of issues, even though there might be some issues. And if there are, they should definitely speak up. But when it comes to people who are obviously uncomfortable, as we've seen many of the people that Joe Biden got a little too close to, maybe you should get the hint. I mean, look, not everybody likes being touched. And there are definitely a lot of situations where you should not do that. No, there is no situation that you should be doing that, in my view. Okay, so now there was another woman, there's a sexual assault survivor that was speaking at a sexual assault survivors conference. Biden allegedly put his hand on her thigh. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? No. So look, I know it sounds like I'm kind of defending him a little bit. Maybe it's because I think he's oblivious. And even though it's no excuse, I kind of get it. But we've all known those people who are a little too friendly, who get a little too close, and they should know better. And I don't know how he didn't know that before. Did nobody tell him that that's creepy? Did nobody say, hey, dude, maybe you shouldn't do that. That looks bad. Maybe they did. Maybe not. Maybe he didn't listen. I don't know. But that said, he's got a clear history of doing this, right? And it is a problem. And I think it's always been a problem, right? Now, on to the main point of the story here is that some of Biden's staffers don't believe that. They believe that this only became a problem thanks to Bernie Sanders. Now, wait a minute. What does Bernie Sanders have anything to do with this? Well, the plain answer would be no. Bernie Sanders is not involved. Bernie Sanders has even gone on the record kind of defending Joe Biden. He said, quote, I have no reason not to believe Lucy, and I think what this speaks to is the need to fundamentally change the culture of this country. But adds, I'm not sure that one incident alone disqualifies anyone. Yeah. So, nonetheless, Axios is reporting that several people close to Biden are suspicious that the Bernie Sanders camp is, quote, at least partly behind the anti-Biden campaign. Now, wait a minute. That is complete and utter insanity. Oh, it's that Bernie Sanders is behind this whole thing. Really now? I mean, come on. For one, okay, Bernie Sanders is far too nice for this. Again, he told Americans back in 2016, if you remember, running against Hillary Clinton, the emails come out and he's like, I'm sick of the damn emails. I don't want to talk about the damn emails. I want to talk about policy. And he has, speaking of policy, kept his critiques of his opponents to policy positions. And look, the reason I say that, and right now I'm, of course, probably making establishment head spin, is that if you look at the primary between Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, right, that was not about policy. No, it was massively negative. Attack ads everywhere. The 3 a.m. ad, the Obama in Muslim garb picture that got released. I mean, that was some nasty campaigning. That's nothing compared, or 2016 and now is nothing compared to what happened in that 2008 primary. It was bad. Bernie Sanders, however, never ran a single negative ad. Nonetheless, you have Biden staffers and the establishment taking this to an absolutely absurd level. Bernie Sanders is to blame for this. He's behind this attack against Joe Biden. What a despicable person. Really, show me one bit of proof, one shred, one email that shows that Bernie Sanders is behind any of this. I mean, did he go back and film all these times of Joe Biden obviously not understanding the idea of personal space? Did he? Did he? Do you have any sort of proof that he instructed any of these women, two of which just came out today, to basically say the same story of Joe Biden kind of did some creepy stuff, wasn't sexual, but it was just uncomfortable, close, and a little creepy. And I was creeped out about this. Like, he overstepped boundaries. Oh, but Jeff, Lucy Flores used to work for Our Revolution, which is the Bernie Sanders group. Yeah, and you know what? She left. She worked there for a short time, and she actually left on not so friendly terms. She has no reason to lie about this. Next. Oh, well, what about the timing? Isn't the timing suspicious? Well, you know what that sounds like? Every time, like, okay, you guys remember the Kavanaugh hearings, right? The right wing would say, oh, but look at the timing, Dr. Ford, and look at the other supposed victims of Brett Kavanaugh. Now, look, not every victim, of course, was being honest that we know of, right? But Dr. Ford was incredibly credible in her allegation, and so were many of the other women, right? So, but what we're hearing here is the same kind of conspiracy theories that the right used against Dr. Ford when the Kavanaugh hearings. Oh, the timing. Oh, it's a political attack. And the thing is here, Biden didn't do sexual assault. This is not sexual assault. This is just being creepy. And the worst and weirdest thing that Joe Biden did is there was a staffer for Jim Himes, right? He apparently grabbed her neck and pulled her head down. She thought, oh my God, he's going to try to kiss me. No, he was rubbing noses with her, which is definitely weird and creepy and wrong, but it's not in the same vein of rape or sexual assault. It's just really weird, creepy, and definitely crosses boundaries of personal space. Okay, so, and yet, of course, unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of Biden defenders sound like the people that they attacked during the Ford hearings. I mean, come on. Can we see beyond blind partisanship here and see that what he's doing is wrong? Now, it kind of feels to me like it's total hypocrisy and another way to justify attacking Bernie Sanders for something that he had literally nothing to do with. And, by the way, Bernie Sanders wasn't even involved in this at all until he came in to say, well, I don't think it should be disqualifying for Mr. Biden or for anyone. Which will undoubtedly probably get him in trouble later. Now, one more thing here. Axios did mention, and that's who wrote the story, that one prominent backer of Joe Biden thinks that when Biden runs, he's ready to kill Bernie. And of course he means, in the primary. But now, here's the thing. There's also the claim that Bernie's only doing this because he's scared to lose the nomination to Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, look, Joe Biden tops some of the polls in some of the important states. A lot of name recognition. There's a chance he'll do fairly well, at least in the first part of the primary. And this is the pattern with Joe Biden, by the way. Every primary that he's been in, he starts out kind of strong and then ends up fading fast. And why is that? That's not necessarily because of anything that has to do with this. No, it's his policy. His record is actually far worse than anything to do with not understanding people's personal space. I mean, for example, he's pro-Iraq war. He spoke out very much in favor of the war. He's pro-banker, had no problem with giving speeches to banks and supporting Hillary Clinton and when she was giving speeches to Goldman Sachs. You have Matthew Iglesias of Vox News referring to him, by the way, as, quote, the Hillary Clinton of 2020. And at this point, that is not a compliment. He does not mean it in a good way. And in addition to being pro-bank and pro-war, he voted for the Defense of Marriage Act before he did help make gay marriage legal. So you have to look at the nuance there. He was very pro-anti-gay. But that sounds... Actually, he was very pro-defense of marriage, which is anti-gay. And then he came out later and was like, well, yeah, we're actually for same-sex marriage. So look, that's an evolution. And if you want to ignore that, that's fine. That is part of his record, right? And let's be fair about that. Also, other things that are part of his record that he may not agree with now is his stance on being tough on crime legislation. So, look, I don't have a problem with people evolving, but you have to look at his record, and you also have to look at what he believes now. And he has positioned himself as sort of the anti-Bernie Sanders. And so, yes, going to continue to be pro-war, going to continue to be pro-bank, pro-establishment. And so, if that matters to you, then Joe Biden's record, not so alluring, not so good. And I think in a country that still has this anti-establishment wave going on and looking more towards progressives, Joe Biden is not going to do very well. That's just my read of the situation. Now, I'm not saying, of course, he's completely horrible. Obviously, he'd be better by Trump, or better than Trump by miles, but I also have to mention that that's kind of a low bar for Democrats. So, now, is this to say that I think that there's a reason they want to blame Bernie Sanders? Yeah. They're scared of his fundraising. They're scared of the energy behind Bernie Sanders and what that energy brings to the campaign, to the election. And right now, this also shows you that they consider Bernie Sanders their top opponent. And I think the very reasons they ascribe to Sanders for allegedly fueling these attacks on Biden may be just their own projection. I think they're projecting. I don't know for sure, but to me, it seems possible, if not likely, in my opinion. Now, what I don't know here, as well, is whether this will sink Biden's campaign. I don't know for sure. And I'm not even sure that this alone should sink his campaign. I think the policy positions that he has and his disdain for millennials and some of the other stuff, for example, there was something that I missed earlier, making sure that people can't discharge their student loans in bankruptcy. He helped with that. But again, I should note that I'm not going to be the person making this decision, who should be. I think women should ultimately be making that decision going forward, as they are a major part of the Democratic Party, a major part of the base. And so they should be making the decision on whether or not this is excusable, or should it disqualify you or not. They should make the decision as it should be. Okay. All right. Let's do the poop story. All right. So there's a bit of crappy news related to climate change. It's being reported that in Alaska, the effects of climate change will be thawing out about 66 tons of human waste left by climbers on the summit of Denali National Park. So now, obviously, this is more of a local story for people in Alaska, but it also has to do with the repercussions of climate change on a larger level, I should say. Now, as far as Denali is concerned, this frozen poop is expected to melt over the next few decades, and even potentially as soon as this summer, thanks to global warming. So now, how big of a problem is this? Well, for the glacier, it's actually kind of a big problem. Now, climbers that are scaling Denali, previously known as Mount McKinley, generate close to 2 metric tons of human waste a year, according to the National Park Service. That is a lot of poo when you think about it. And generally, people don't like to think about that, but when you're on a mountain, you got to go somewhere, right? Now, where they would go, the details are actually kind of gross. Human waste was left in snow pits on something called the Kahiltna Glacier, the most common route up, or thrown into deep crevasses at higher elevations. From the crevasse you come, to the crevasse you return. Ugh. Now, it turns out that happened to be a big problem, according to Michael Loso. Now, he's a National Park Service glaciologist who have been studying the problem of climber excrement on the mountain for close to a decade. Now, imagine that. Kind of a crappy job. My opinion. But then again, you do what you love, even if some people think it's crap. Okay. Now, but no, what he found is no laughing matter. He actually performed several experiments that the snow buried, or that showed that the buried feces eventually resurfaced farther downstream on the surface of the glacier, where they begin to melt. Now, the problem with that is that it could cause some health issues for anyone around that area. Generally, I don't think a lot of people live around that area, but nonetheless, that is not what you want to have downstream. Now, Loso's research suggested that, in general, the bacteria and other things that lived in feces survive after being buried in the snow or dropped in a crevasse. Tests of the rivers into which the glacier melts found low levels of fecal coliform bacteria. Now, it wasn't enough to really cause huge problems and be completely unsafe, but nonetheless, that is poo water. Fun. Not something I want to be around. But anyway, now, as far as fun goes, let's get a load of this quote here. He said, this is Loso, quote, "The waste will emerge at the surface not very different from when it was buried. It will be smushed and have been frozen and be really wet. It will be biologically active. So the E. coli that was in the waste when it was buried will be alive and well. We expect it to still smell bad and look bad." Great. Awesome. Now, look, thawing poop is both funny and gross. But the real story, of course, here is climate change. And by the way, just to answer any questions on that, there are now changes at Denali and new technologies that are allowing people to carry their feces off the mountain. So let's be fair on that. In fact, I've got more information on that further on in the story. But first, I want to talk about the climate change aspect of this. Now, in Alaska, climate change has had a huge impact. Research by the National Park Service found that in the past 50 years, the area covered by ice within the Alaskan parks has diminished by a total of 8%. Now, look, you want to think, oh, 8%, that doesn't sound very much. Well, it turns out it actually kind of is a big deal and is a lot of territory. To put it into perspective, Loso said, "We have lost more glacier cover in the Alaska National Parks than there is area in the whole state of Rhode Island." So there is now a loss of a total area of Rhode Island when it comes to ice in Alaska. And he said one of the consequences of warming temperatures is that the surface of the glacier is melting more quickly. And the melting, of course, is expected to get worse if we don't do something about it. Actually, maybe pass a real Green New Deal, for example. Now, as far as the poop problem is concerned, the guide companies that lead many of the 1,200 climbers who attempt the summit each year have voluntarily decided to start packing out their human waste. In the year before, the National Park Service had instituted a policy that all such waste below 14,000 feet must be carried off the mountain. Now, climbers have actually taken this as a challenge, an additional challenge to climbing the mountain. Loso said climbers, and particularly guide services, are really embracing the new policy and are even exceeding it. Well, that's great. Way to go for it. It has become kind of an informal badge of merit to carry off all your waste. Wonderful. So I guess it's a bit of a positive twist at the end, sort of. But again, the real issue here is climate change and what we're going to do about it as a species in the macro scale. I think, again, we need a Green New Deal. We need something akin to what we did in World War II, or maybe the Marshall Plan for the climate. So to ramp up all of our industry and all of our economic might into combating what is actually no laughing matter, what could end up being one of the biggest problems what is the biggest problem facing our species? And that's not a bunch of crap. If we don't do anything, melting poop's going to be the last of our problems. So Let's do something. Okay. That's it. That's all I got for you guys. Thank you for going around the nation with me today. Thank you for liking and sharing the stream. If you haven't already, please do so. Thank you to the members, of course. Members get the show ad-free. Which, by the way, I have to remember to upload yesterday's show for the members. So thank you, everybody. Love you guys. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. We'll see you guys. Not tomorrow. We won't be here tomorrow. We'll see you Friday.